Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Good morning beautiful, how are you today? My name is Joesephyr and it's finally time to make Future Pulls 5, the Fifthening, which is going to be a video that I'm using to navigate my own journey through FR era. I've done months of research into everything that's going to be happening over in the JP section so that I could bring this video to you guys and kind of share what my journey is going to look like and also recommendations that I would give to others. Now obviously this is not a objective look at everything that's happening in JP, and I will preface this video by saying I do not play the JP version of Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia myself. This research has been garnered through a lot of video watching, speaking to various different players. Thank you very much to those of you who've taken the time out to talk to me. Lots of reading, lots of watching, all of that good stuff. So if you want to take a look at what the future of Dissidia holds for us and take a look at the research that I've done so that you don't have to, stay tuned and keep on watching. Now before we get started, I will just say this is going to be a very long video and I expect that people will check back on this video as time progresses. But because this is a researched version of the JP version with the purposes of informing ourselves ready for the global version, I will reiterate again that I do not personally play the JP version of the game, and all of the stuff that you're about to see is based on research that I have myself witnessed. So there may be things that you may disagree with, there may be things that you've discussed with other players that may be different from the players that I've spoken with that may tell you different things. This is not a definitive, this is what you have to do to get through FR and Shinryu era. This is just a researched version of what I plan to do and give recommendations based on what I've seen, what comes up a lot, things like that. So try to keep it classy, keep it kind, and if you're going to be making comments on things that you possibly disagree with, then that's totally fine as well. There's no reason, there's no one thing that everyone does in this game that is correct. I'm just prefacing that so that we can mitigate the shadiness for a reason. And I do want to give a big thank you to everybody that watches these videos, anything that you've done that's ever sort of brought you to my channel for any reason, but no one can I thank more than my patrons over at Patreon who literally keep this channel alive and give me the time and the ability to be able to research all of this stuff and give you guys videos like this. Now I do shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person is going to be Wolfie, who is one of my longest running patrons. Has been there with me since the FFTCG days, but before I even played Dissidia Opera Omnia, and is one of my Ultima patrons, and a massive thank you goes out to you for being with me for this long, and I hope that I can do you and everyone who supports this channel proud. And I will also say a big shout out to all of the JP content creators out there, because without your videos, without your research, without your gameplay, I wouldn't be able to make videos like this. And like I said, there are things that people will do differently to the way that I will do things, as is the case with all of my videos, by the way. But if you don't agree with the things that I'm saying, then perhaps go and take a look at some of the stuff that they're doing, because supporting all of the other content creators is a big thing. Okay, so here we are with DissidiaCompendium.com, which is an absolute godsend, and I use it in all of my videos. So if you haven't seen this website before and you want to learn more about each character individually, absolutely 100% check out this website. So then, past that as well, over in the corner, you can see that we have the Ultima website, which is a website I use very frequently for researching a little bit of JP, seeing what the general consensus is. But it is, again, not a be-all and end-all in terms of looking at tier lists or anything like that. For me, it's just a really good way of catching up with what's coming out at any given time. So we're going to start with Snow's Batch. Now, we've already started to look at Snow's Batch, including Freya in Should You Pull videos recently, and we're going to gloss over this section of the events and things like that, because we're going to be focusing on Shinryu era instead. But there are already some things in the stuff that we already have access to and this batch that will come in very handy. One of which is a character that we all already tend to have, which is Selphie. Now, Selphie is a fantastic character just because of the ways in which she does so much damage with so little. She can charge FR gauges really quickly. She doesn't actually get her FR boards, or so the ability to charge the FR gauge quicker or anything like that until Tifa and the 5th anniversary. But even without that, she is still an absolutely phenomenal character to have access to because of her Rapture debuff, giving you launches on everything that she does. She's very powerful and she does really well because of it. So I absolutely 100% recommend Selphie throughout pretty much the entire era. Like, if you do look at any tier listing over at Ultima, she is still considered a top tier character considering how long ago her LD was released, and she doesn't even have an FR. So what I've done here is I'm separating my two kind of short lists of recommendations by characters that you absolutely do not need to have the FR for, but will work really well anyway, and also characters that I will be looking at very heavily with their FR. If you want to learn more about the mechanics of FR, Shinryu, all of that stuff, then perhaps go and take a look at my last video, which is the Future Pulse 5 Prelude, which explains all of the mechanics that goes along with this. Now, not only do we get, we'll talk about Selphie because most people already have her, but we also get Raijin at this point as well. Now, Raijin, honestly, is one of the most important characters you can pick up that you probably won't use in your party, and the reason for that is going to be his LD call. His LD call makes it so that you don't take damage for 2 turns from any enemy. They also get HP damage resist down, so it adds a little bit onto that as well. You're going to want attack down at 100% because it's just there, and they can't inflict debuffs. You would be absolutely shocked how often I see this call used, even now in the JP version. And the last thing that I've watched for clarification was Beatrix's FR's release because it was Beatrix. We're not going to go quite that far with this video. We're going to go up as far as about Cid Reigns, that kind of area, because then that way we can then make another video nearer the time if we need to. We are approaching the end of that era and we want to see what's going to come about in that era back then. So we also have Snow as well. Now, Snow is very good at this point in time and will last very well into the very earliest sections of Shinryu. Like, he doesn't actually do that well when you get into Shinryu. However, one thing he does have, which is on his BT, is Ice Enchant. Now, Ice Enchant will come into play with Kamlanaut, but you don't have to have Snow BT to do that. One of the characters that a lot of us all have access to and have had for quite some time is Kurosame. Now, Kurosame obviously can do a lot with his LD call. That's going to be even more apparent going forward. And most people will just use this as their enabler for Kamlanaut. But if you don't have that and you can't wait to get it, then Snow will do the job as well. And likelihood is a lot of players are probably going to pick up Snow because they'll either be going for Raijin or they'll be going for Cissnei. Now, Cissnei is also going to be on my shortlist for recommendations for characters that don't necessarily have to have an FR. The reason for that is because one thing you will notice is the more HP damage you can deal in between turns, the better. And Cissnei is very good at that. So her Besiege and her Besiege Plus and her Besiege Plus Plus are attacks that occur between player turns. So they're follow-ups for everyone. If you've used Yang, then you'll know what sort of thing to expect here. She also has crit fixing for the party and aura-based stuff, which is very nice as well. And because of that, you can then make use of these damaging attacks even during Shinryu era because these attacks scale with the force time attack percentage buff. So she's somebody that I also see used very regularly, even up until recently in JP. No, she's not as powerful as some characters that are released then, but she's definitely got a very high ceiling for damage. You don't have to necessarily pull for her if you plan on using Kain a lot, which will also, spoilers, go on this recommendation list, or like other characters like Yang with his C90 is actually very good as well. But I really enjoy Cissnei because the ceiling for her damage capabilities is very high. So I have put her on this list regardless because I think that she's very useful going forward generally. So now we're going to move on into Prishe's batch, and we also get Yuna's BT plus here. Now, Yuna is still very good. She gets reworked here where she gets a lot more damage out of her stuff. I think the problem with Yuna is the arrival of Garnet in Global. Now, Yuna is very good, like I said, but her BT effect here doesn't add much that Garnet doesn't already do. The main reason that you'd want to be using Yuna is just because she does have Isuna, she does have like curative things that Garnet doesn't have quite as on tap as Yuna does. But realistically, I think if you've got access to some of the big hitters, supporter characters, you probably don't need Yuna at this point. Prishe, I will say, is actually very good. Like, she increases the number of bravery hits you do, so for every bravery hit you get another one through her 100 Fists buff, And if you like using her in your party, she is actually very powerful for quite a while, and her BT effect adds that in again by also adding party max brave cap, party brave damage cap, and then adding another bravery hit per bravery hit. So she's actually doing very, very heavy damage in terms of brave shaving. I personally am not pulling for her BT. I am, however, going to go for her LD, because her LD call also applies the 100 Fists buff to your party, or to your character, so when you're dealing a brave hit with that character, you get an additional one on top of it. Lan and Rain also get their C90 here, and it's realistically not that great because it doesn't add very many HP dumps onto their kit, which makes me really sad because I really like Lan and Rain, and I never really got to use them because I never got their LD or their BT the last time around, and now I just don't think it's worth me going for them. And I'm not the biggest fan of Prishe's batch either. Like, Lulu does more of what Lulu's always done, which is fire enchant and damage based on fire damage. And that's pretty much all she does. And her Doll Master from her LD adds party HP damage up, makes it so the fire damage is added in with other elemental attacks as well, and makes those fire attacks stronger. The only reason realistically that a player is going to want to use Lulu, or to get Lulu, is to get her LD call so that you have access to it ready for Braska if you want to use him. However, I also think Braska is fairly mediocre as well, so I wouldn't pull for Lulu, who isn't seen as very popular, to then use Braska unless I really loved him. And then the other character that comes along on Prishe's batch is Seiss. Now, Seiss is interesting. She's an off-turn damage dealer. Her LD makes a trap come out so that you get an additional attack on everything that you do between turns. So it's a dark melee enchanter, which is also kind of cool. But the main reason that you go for Seiss is her EX. So what you're looking at is this line here, which is moves the next turn of all targets to after the enemy who is furthest away. So the idea is that you delay one enemy really heavily, and then you use Seiss's EX to then make all of the enemy turns be delayed as much as the one you used all the delays on. My thing with Seiss is that I just don't think she's necessary. If you've got Cisne, if you've got Freya, if you're going for Kain, I think all of those characters typically do what Seiss does and has a longer lasting time doing it. Because Seiss is a damage dealer, she sadly suffers from not having a great deal of support for the party, but also she doesn't have a BT, and going forward, if you want the path of least resistance, I'm not saying that Seiss is bad because she isn't, then you will probably want a character that's dealing off turn damage either with a really high sort of damage capability ceiling like Cisne does, or more consistency with additional supporting effects like Freya and Kain do. So I'm not going to be pulling for Seiss. Now, one character I actually forgot to mention when it came to Snow's batch is the Emperor. And Emperor is actually very good as well, just for the amount of raw damage he can put out. Lots of people have seen meme videos online where he puts out crazy amounts of damage using Rem, using Crow, CA, all sorts of crazy things like that, and it is really powerful. And if you're against an enemy that can be delayed or allowed you to allow Emperor to take a lot of turns, he will do you very well for certainly the early portion of Lufenia, or the late part of Lufenia and the very earliest parts of Shinryu as well. So moving into Vincent's batch, which is the presumed last batch before we hit FR era, we have Sephiroth, Vincent, Realm, Edge, and King. So Sephiroth actually does get a lot more damage added to him. His C90 makes his EX significantly stronger, and his Heaven's Light burst makes it so that it lasts for a turn longer. Obviously you get two uses of it, and it's a very powerful burst effect, and it adds party attack up by 100%, party brave damage cap up by 50%, and party brave gains up by 50%, which is very interesting on a character like Sephiroth. And I honestly do plan to use Sephiroth in a few missions, like namely, I kind of want him for DET9. It's either going to be him or Kadaj, who is also very good on Raijin's banner with his C90. But I probably wouldn't pull for him if you don't already have him. You're better off saving up to get Kain stuff when that comes around, if you ask me. But if you already have it, it is a very good green. Now, Vincent obviously gets his rework at long last. We've had his LD for a long time, and a lot of people didn't really like it. But his BT also is quite cool. Like, his BT does a lot of extra debuffs, and it also gives you the ability to stop enemies from buffing themselves. And that can be very useful. If you're looking for a character to complete DET9 with, you're not going to get much better than Vincent for that particular event. But bearing in mind that I plan on using Alphino on every event up until FR era, because if you've been watching my stuff recently, you'll know that I've been using Alphino a lot. This is where I kind of think I'm probably just going to try and save pulling here if I can help it, so that I can then go ahead and do more stuff when Shinryu comes around. DET9 is the only one where I'm looking at Alphino thinking, I'm really not sure if you can do this, but I think that that's why I personally want Snow and then Kadaj to round that out. If you do happen to get Vincent, he's good, but he's not going to last a huge amount of time within FR era. Now, Realm, Edge, and King, they are good. Like, there's nothing wrong with them specifically, except maybe King. Realm adds, with her LD, her tentacle attacks, which is Ultra, so if you like Ultra, you're going to love this. Any additional turns that she grants herself through her Sketch debuff, she then gets an additional attack on top of it, so it makes it so that her damage is much stronger, and obviously with Z90, her EX is significantly stronger as well by having 100% AoE damage 4 times on multiple targets. It's good, and it can actually be useful in, like, the aforementioned DET9. Basically, the way in which I'm formulating my ideas for what I'm pulling for, it's not what I plan on using on every event. Every batch sort of has one event that is more kind of challenging and prevalent than the others. Like in Snow's case, it's the 6-man beta. In Prishe's case, it's Divine Bahamut, which is obviously very noteworthy for being a big old batch of resources as well. With Vincent, it's Dimensions and Transcendence tier 9, and so on and so forth. So with Divine Bahamut, I probably plan to use Alphino, Quistis, and Emperor, because he can't be delayed normally, but having Quistis accompany Emperor means that Emperor is going to be doing a lot of damage, and then Alphino gets to sit there. My way around it's going to be a bit weird, because I've assigned myself to using Alphino each time, but I think as long as you kind of take each single event, like the big one, and then the other ones will kind of fall into place anyway. Edge actually is also very cool. Like, if I were going to pull on a banner for Vincent's batch, it would probably be Edge, because his LD adds additional follow-up attacks onto his evasion, and obviously his EX has always been very good because it provides so much evasion. It also interestingly adds a lot of fire damage to his kit, which is very interesting. But yeah, so you essentially get your evasion from him, but I'm not personally looking for Edge or any of the characters here. As a matter of fact, the character I'm looking at most here, and there is a character that's going to go on my shortlist here, it's actually Galuf, because Galuf gets a lot of damage out of his C90, which is also going to show up on Sephiroth's banner here. So he's going to be somebody that gets used very frequently going forward. He's a fantastic evasion tank, has been for a long time. His EX extension, his C90 extension makes him significantly stronger. His rework will do the same. So I don't personally feel the need to pull for Edge, because I feel that anything I would use him in, I could use Galuf, or later down the line, and not that much later, Auron. And then lastly, King, his LD adds damage. Like, he does a lot of damage. He has a lot of HP dumps in his kit. It's fine, but damage is literally all he does. Like, that is it. So for that reason, I don't feel that he's a character I will use frequently. His event has an interesting Lufenia orb where you have to recover 2 ability uses in a turn, and I plan on using Kuja for that, because his LD buff, or his extended LD does that. If you have Vayne, you can use him for that. King obviously is going to do very well for that. Selphie can actually do very well for that if you're willing to go like ham on using her C65, because that recovers both of her skills. There's lots of ways around it, even if it doesn't seem apparent at first. So for that reason, I just think that if you're going to skip any batch, it's probably going to be Vincent, because there's just better things either side of it. So now we come to a point where we're starting to hit Shinryu era. So the characters we have to cover here are going to be Kain, Warrior of Light, Kryl, and Braska. And we also have Auron, who is not on Braska's batch. Jekt is on Braska's batch. Auron is actually on Kryl's, and it's very, very good. The C90 you get from this is going to be Auron. That's the one you really want. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, but pulling on 4 FRs at this point is not realistically what you're after, because they're not actually very good comparative to anything that comes after it. And it is totally possible to get by through this batch without using any FRs at all. But I'm still going to be putting both Auron and Kain on this list for characters that you don't need the FR for, but are still recommended. Let me tell you this, you are going to see a lot of Kain pretty much from this point onwards, because he is a fantastic friend unit, he is a fantastic LD carrier, he is just a brilliant character all over, and it has absolutely zero to do with his FR. His FR is actually really quite poor, because it increases by a menial amount when you select a ranged attack or you do a launch that has all 3 characters in it. That's kind of it. It's the first FR, it's not gonna be very good, and that's okay. However, the attack you get from Rising Drive, the attack that you get when you get on the come down, has 2 HP dumps in it, and it scales with FR damage and force time. Therefore, it's a fantastic thing to have, and the fact that he has a BT that increases max Brave cap up, as well as HP damage, Brave damage, all of that good stuff, you're going to want to get Kain's BT and LD at the very least, unless you're more concerned about using him as a friend unit. But you're going to want to have somebody that's dealing a large amount of turn damage. If you have Sisney already, then I think you can probably leave Kain if you want to. I will not be leaving him because I think that having that BT as well as his LD core capabilities, he doesn't necessarily require a turn hogger as much as say Sisney does, because he does still have good moves on the ground. Sisney suffers from the off-turn damage is basically all she has, and Kain at least does solid damage because of his BT outside of his LD. But realistically, you're gonna want him with a turn hogger, one of which is going to be coming up very, very shortly. And he's just a very good character to obtain, so he's absolutely on my recommendation list. Warrior of Light is a character that I adore. He is one of my favourite characters in Final Fantasy. We know how much I love Warrior of Light, and his rework and his BT Plus are actually very good. But I don't think a lot of people are going to use him, certainly not for his BT phase anyway, over characters like Galuf and Auron, because they just do that much more damage than he does while also still protecting the party. If you want protection for your party, he does the job very, very well. And we've had some really powerful tanks come around like Zac, we've had Snow at this point. They're good, and Warrior of Light is definitely along those lines, but you probably don't have to have him if you're not that fussed about him. I'll probably green him because I love him, but I don't think anyone else necessarily has to. He gets more party damage, more max Brave cap, which is lovely, and party Brave gains up by 50%, which is a wonderful thing to have, but you don't have to go for him. In terms of the Kain Shinryu, if you don't want to pull for Kain FR, which realistically you don't have to, I'll probably be using gems on his banner anyway, because if I do happen to get his FR, it's an attack that I can use with an increased bravery cap during his burst phase while I'm using it. Pretty much the only reason I'm going to be using that FR. It's not good. And then after Kain, we have Kryl. Now, Kryl gets, reworks. Obviously, her damage gets increased exponentially. She also has a force weapon as well. And if I were going to pull on a batch here, it would be Kryl, but that would be down to favoritism alone, because there are much better thunder damage-based FRs going forward than Kryl. I love Kryl, so it'll be a few tickets at best, because I already have the star of her banner, which is Auron. Now, Auron is good anyway, and we've known that for a while. His EX gets increased to have multiple HP dumps, all of that good stuff, but more importantly, his counter gets 3 HP dumps instead. And all this while he's still doing his debuffs, he's still recovering the party. He's very, very good at this point in time, and you can use him for a pretty hefty amount of time. I plan on using him on his own event alongside Garnet and Kain. Now, if you have Garnet already, I should probably have put her in my little shortlist there, because she is still gonna be very good for a very long time. You really don't have to worry about her longevity, that's for sure. You can absolutely use her for a good period of time. And then finally, on this batch, we're going to be looking at Braska. Braska is so disappointing to me. I'm really annoyed at Braska's kit, because it looked like it could be really good, except he's missing a very critical part of his kit that would make him decent. because he is a decent charge character. Kryl also does this as well, because he has Curaga, where Kryl has a Ray of Hope. Lots of instant turn things that don't do damage and you can charge the boards really quickly with if you wanted to. Curaga's healing, gives you party buffs, gives you all of that nice stuff that you need, generally speaking. And his attacks are, they're okay. He'd be decent if he enchanted the party for fire, which he doesn't, considering that his FR weapon asks for a party member to deal fire damage and be at full health. If that were the case, he wouldn't be too bad. But as it is, you then have to go into a fire enchant call like either Lulu or Ignis, and realistically it's just not that great. I'm not going to use Braska for the event that it comes with, which is going to be against Braska's final Aeon. I will probably use something along the lines of Warrior of Light, Sephiroth, maybe Ramza, maybe Snow, or maybe a Turn Hogger, something like that. I think that that's how I'm going to tackle that, and then use a Kain friend unit or something to deal with that. As I said, with Shinryu going forward, all enemies will carry sort of force time effects of their own. Braska's event asks for fire damage, but you can kind of get by with Brave Gains if you really want to. And weirdly, Sephiroth and Warrior of Light work really well together because they both increase Brave Gains very heavily, whilst also protecting the party and reducing the bravery to 1 at the same time. So that's my plan for that particular event. So from this, you definitely want Kain, you definitely want Auron, everything else you could probably leave. I like Warrior of Light and I kind of like Kryl, but you could probably live without them too. So now we come to the big one. Now, this is very much a contentious thing within the community because Kamlanaut was very much a character that people saw as bugged and kind of ruined FR era before it started. And it turned out he wasn't bugged, it was an intended feature, and we'll get to why in a moment. But he's actually just very good all around anyway. Now, one does not have to pull for Kamlanaut. Let me just say that straight away. You don't have to. You don't have to pull for Kain either. You could probably get by without either of them. A lot of people use Kamlanaut as a friend unit because he does very well. He doesn't have to be the character that's taking turns. As a matter of fact, all you really want from him is his BT effect and his FR. But you can only take one friend unit at a time. So if you want to make use of Kamlanaut through your Kurosame calls, etc., and just kind of go off, you can absolutely do that with a friend unit. And then Kain can be the thing that's dealing a lot of off-turn damage because you get a lot of HP damage increases during force time from Kamlanaut during launches, which means that Selfie, again, is going to be really powerful. But you don't have to do all of that. The reason I've put both Kain and Kamlanaut onto this list is because they are both extraordinary damage-dealing characters for a very long period of time. And if you don't want to pull for those, then that's absolutely fine. There's no reason why you would absolutely have to use Kamlanaut. In fact, you don't have to use Kamlanaut or Kain for certain events. Like, this is the next 6-man, and there are people that use Braska and Emperor and Layla, and Braska, Yuna, Warrior of Light. There's characters that you can use. Like, I don't particularly like Braska, because I'd much rather pull for Kamlanaut, who I know is extremely good, and I'd like to point out I've been using Kamlanaut when his LD first came out, thank you very much. But the point is that he is extremely good, and to not comment on that would be remiss. So Piercing Radiant Blade is his burst effect that basically makes it so that enemies are paralyzed and can't do anything pretty much the entire duration of the burst. Like, as whenever anything attacks an enemy, it inflicts his immemorial captivity, which is his paralysis debuff that also reduces their damage resist down and also gives you more turns as well. So it's good, but Demon Blade is really where it's at. So it asks for ice damage. Now bear in mind, once again, Kamlanaut does not enchant the party for ice, so you're gonna want to use your Kurosame calls here. And it also asks for enemies that are afflicted with a debuff that means they can't act, whether that be paralysis from his regular debuff from Glassification, which is also better now because you don't have to break an enemy with Bravery. Plus, to do it, you can use Esoteric Region, his other skill, to then trigger that and get paralysis from that. Or Confusion, his BT effect, obviously. He's a character you will want the entire kit for if you're going to use him. Absolutely 100%. because it also says here, this magical phrasing, which is the bit that everyone says is bugged, includes attacks that include during knockback. So you're going to be looking at 80% buffs to your damage, which put everything before him to absolute shame in terms of just doing the thing and dealing a lot of damage during your force time. There isn't a character at this point that does anything like that. Paladin Cecil does actually come back again with this banner as well. Like, he's the returning BT with his C90. Probably not going to use him very often, if I'm honest. His day in the sun has definitely been had. Like, if you do want to use him, fantastic. You're probably not going to need him for anything, though. He's very generic, unfortunately, at this point. So I wouldn't recommend greening him. Certainly not if you're pulling for Kamlanaut. And then the next event after that is going to be Desh's Intersecting Wills, which is obviously going to contain Desh, and Desh is still Desh. He does have some randomness to his kit, so like he relies on enemy turns. He is another thunder damage dealer. He has a lot of like more thunderness stuff, and it also ties in well with Kamlanaut. Like, after an enemy was unable to act, you get bonus from that, or after a party member selects the thunder attack command. You'll notice that enchanting damage is going to be a thing going forward, but at least Desh does actually enchant the party for thunder, so there is that. But he's not the star of his own banner again either, because Machina is. Machina gets his C90 from here, and his Guardian Blades is fine, like, that's kind of whatever. What you're actually after is the fact that his counterattack now actually does HP damage, which is really good. Stunning Slash also gets reworked so that Spiral's Linchpin does double HP dump, so combine that with the counter, and he's actually a pretty solid off-turn damage dealer, like enemy off-turn damage dealer as well as player off-turn. So that's something that's definitely going to come into play going forward, as well as the differentiation between an enemy off-turn damage dealer and a general off-turn damage dealer. So let's say Cisne versus somebody like Therion. So Therion is a trap character. All of his off-turn damage is after enemy turns. Still valuable, but obviously characters like Machina and Cisne and Kain, etc. are characters that deal damage in between turns, irrespective of whether it was yours or the enemy's, and therefore they are very valuable going forward. And Machina, now being a C90, his BT effect is still very good, his BT attack, his Furious Blaze plus burst is still very good, and now he can equip an Ultima weapon as well, so that's fabulous as well. Then we get to Tidus. Barrett is also there. He's there. He's still Barrett. Pretty much all I have to say about him. But then we go into him, and he is another character that I would very heavily recommend for players that are looking for the path of least resistance. You want a turn hogger character that can take advantage of Kain, Freya, Cisne, anything like that? Tidus is your boy. Stick Tidus next to Kamlanaut while the BT effect is active, while the FR is up. You've got Selfie's Rapture debuff up. You've got Kain up in the sky contributing to those attacks. You're good. You're good. And even if you're not using Kamlanaut, his FR is actually very strong as well. So it asks for instant turn rate or debuff targets. Tidus does that by himself, and it's just very strong. There's nothing super like interesting about his FR attack, unlike Desh, who does actually inflict paralysis with the attack itself, but it's really good and it just works with so many different things. The idea with Shinryu is you tend to build up to the FR gauge using somebody typically like Selfie, where you're just using turn after turn after turn after turn. The gauge is charged, the debuffs are all set up, all your cool abilities are active, everything's good to go. Swap out your Selfie for either a Kain or a Kamlanaut friend unit, go to town with them, then go off with your primary damage dealer. Tidus absolutely fits that role to a T. So the next batch that we're going to be talking about is going to be Gabranth's batch here. So Gabranth is going to be coming along with himself, obviously, Lael returning with his BT+, and then we're going to get Pain C90 as well, Ursula, Caius, and Fujin. And with, I will say as well, if you didn't manage to get Freya when she first came around, my original plan was to pull for Freya on this particular banner, because I do actually quite like Ursula's FR as well, and I'll get to why in a moment. Now, Gabranth is a interesting character. He's actually very good. Like, he basically makes it so that he gets re-break on everything. He's got some really strong debuffs. He obviously has the protection buffs as well, so less HP and bravery damage taken, so there's that to bear in mind as well. Innocence is good. His BT effect is actually quite strong as well because it increases all the numbers that you actually want and also changes his regular debuff into Felon's Punishment, which makes so their attack is way down and their HP damage is further down, so they're going to be dealing very little to you. His FR, first of all, is adorable. He's kind of teaching Gao how to use his moves, and it's really, really sweet. And it also makes it so that all targets' break status resets after each move. So it's good. So what you get from this is that you need to be dealing break every turn and hitting a debuff target. So while it's great that Gabranth inflicts break all the time, you kind of want someone else to be doing it as well. So there are combos to be had with Kamlanaut, and this is going to be coming along with Divine Odin. And Divine Odin really, really likes breaking things a lot. Really, like, you punish him by breaking him regularly. Ironically, Alphino is actually really good for this. But you can get away with not having an FR even up until this point if you really wanted to. You can use characters like Sid Reigns is still really good, Freya is still really good, Kain is still really good if you don't have his FR, etc. But Gabranth is solid. There's nothing outwardly wrong with him. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want him, even if I didn't need him, just because I really like the way he plays. Lael, on the other hand, I don't have the nicest things to say about Lael, and the only reason for that is the existence of Selphie. Selphie, sadly, renders pretty much any other character that uses launch as their main mechanic redundant because she's just better at it than everybody else. Kais, great as an LD call. Probably not going to bring him along, even though he's, like, when he came out, it's like, oh yeah, 8 turns of his buff is ridiculous. It's not as good as Selphie, and that's the be-all and end-all of it when it comes to other launch characters, unfortunately. Ursula I do like. Ursula I think is a nice character to have, for a similar reason to Alphino in that it makes it so that you're extremely hard to break. And also her FR is very generic, and it's nice to have generic and easy FRs to build around because you're not asking for anything specific. She's asking for your bravery to be at least 20% of their max bravery, which is obviously going to be a thing if you're using her LD, or if their bravery is at least 100% of their max bravery, which makes it even quicker. So it's actually just a really nice, easy FR condition to fulfill. So if you're not worried about doing anything specific, Ursula's a really nice place to go. And like I said, on her banner, Freya is also present again if you wanted to double up on the Dragoon realness. Caius and Fujin. Caius is pretty tragic, unfortunately. There's not much new to him that wasn't already there, but it's nice, but he's also not the character that gets the FR on these banners. You will notice, like Tidus has this as well with Kamlanaut's batch, that when these banners are released, you'll typically see 2 banners. One that features a featured character's BT, and another that features the current BT, like, cycle character's BT. So in this case, it's Fujin's FR alongside Caius's BT, which is a bit, and then Fujin FR featured alongside Gabranth's BT instead. Fujin is sad. Really sad. She's a launch-based character, so she's already on a back foot because she's not Selphie. She could have been really good, though, had her FR not been quite so restrictive. Party member selects a wind attack command. Sure, that's fine. She enchants wind, and she's actually one of the only characters that does. So even if I don't get her FR, I wouldn't mind getting her LD so that I can then use it with another character that I do really enjoy a bit later on. But it asks for Fujin specifically to initiate launches, and that is not good enough. It's just so sad to see Fujin keep getting kind of shafted because the rest of her stuff it's not up there, really. Like, she's getting extra HP dumps. Like, 5 HP dumps from her LD is nice. It's pretty much it. And you're getting her LD trap as well, which is cute, but it's not really gonna cut the mustard. Like, honestly, if there is a super skippable banner, even though I kind of want to throw tickets at it to get the LD, it's another situation of, like, pulling for Lulu to make Braska better. I would be pulling for Fujin to make Sabin better later down the line. But at least Sabin's, like, kind of good. So the next batch we have to look at here is going to be Sherlotta's batch. Now Sherlotta comes along with Exdeath, which we'll get to in a second, Rino, and then Cloud of Darkness and Setzer. Now, to look at Exdeath first and get him out of the way, Exdeath is a bit tragic, unfortunately, because much like Alphino, HP poison does not scale with force time damage increases, which makes it crap, sadly. And like when your entire shtick revolves around that, it's not good for you. And Exdeath is a real victim of this because they really wanted to push it. Like his BT plus makes his poison trigger twice, it makes it doubled. But his mechanics just don't work with the system that's in place. And honestly, coming from somebody who tokened Exdeath BT because I wanted to play around with him, I got nothing. I got nothing for you. Sherlotta, on the other hand, has a lot to love. Like, I was this close to putting her in my shortlist. The only reason I haven't, and I probably still could anyway, I just haven't to try and keep it as short as I could, is because of the character with a BT that follows her. But Sherlotta is very good. Let me just put that there now. She is like the supercharged queen when it comes to building up an FR gauge quickly. And her BT effect is also extremely good. She doesn't actually get that much of a rework from like her LD, etc. And she obviously already has her C90. But her LD is already very good because of the damage caps it can get to. She also uses Crystal Core Wave, Light of the Crystal, to just free turn, much like Selfie, but Selfie at this point doesn't have force boards where Sherlotta does, so she's going to do it better. But her BT effect also comes into play with this, so when you are ready to go off, you can just crack the BT effect and you're good to go. So what her BT effect is essentially Kate Sith's effect. So whenever you deal a bravery hit, you get bravery for like 10% of your max bravery every time you hit with bravery. So you're going to be recovering with brave gains a ridiculous amount, considering she also has 50% party brave gains, extra max brave caps, all of the good numbers that you want, which a lot of the earlier characters don't. She's just very, very good. And her FR is fine. Like, it is fine. Like, ironically, it summons Kate Sith. And it also makes it so that you just have to use a charged bravery or HP command. So obviously it's meant to go with like Chuck's staff and stuff. But because Sherlotta recovering bravery to party, and it has to be Sherlotta specifically as part of that, then it's like it's good with her BT effect. Like, it's really good with her BT effect. But there are like you're using her to charge the FR gauge, not make use of it. Like, she's very, very powerful for it though. Now Rino. I want to talk about Rino because Rino is a weird one. Rino, there are a lot of players that I've spoken to that swear by Rino FR. And in hindsight, I was originally like, what? But his kit goes against it. It doesn't make sense. It's starting to make sense to me. Basically, it's when a party member selects a thunder attack command, shock horror, or when an enemy's turn ends, or when an enemy selects a melee or ranged command. Now, if you're against the right enemies, you're looking at 50% increase in your force time or force time attack percentage anytime an enemy acts. Now, the reason that this is good is because enemy turns don't tick down your force time. So therefore, there are situations where enemies will get multiple turns in a row or attack repeatedly that you can take advantage of because of a combination of Pyramid and the FR on Rino. That means that your enemy off-turn damage dealers, most recently I've been seeing Rino and Beatrix used, and it works really well, that just increase the force time damage exponentially and very quickly and makes it last. So that's actually very powerful. My issue with Rino's FR is the rest of his gear, because his numb debuff, which is not really what you're wanting from his FR, delays the enemy after they've taken a turn. So you're going to have to just not use this attack at all if you want to make use of his FR, because it literally grinds against itself. But in the situations that Rino is good, he is absolutely fantastic. But I haven't put him on my shortlist because I don't think there is any point where you absolutely have to have Reno for anything. I mean, you don't realistically have to have any of the characters I've listed, but I see things with Reno that make me warded against him. But having seen him play so well in enemy off-turn compositions, I'm a lot more keen on him than I was before. Bear in mind that with FRs, because they are very intensive on resources, certainly to begin with, you'll notice that at this point we've only got 2 FRs here that I've got on my shortlist for recommendations to max out. You could obviously do more than this. But if you're looking at saving resources and keeping as much as you can aside, then that's why I've kept the list shorter. Cloud of Darkness is a character that I'm personally quite interested in, but again is not on my shortlist. She gets reworked so she has more HP dumps on everything, she gets darkness stacks more quickly. I like her because she has a BT. And I don't have her BT green right now, but if I were to get her FR, I would then green her BT. Because she plays very well with magic-based delay damage dealers. Namely the Emperor. Like, I'm looking at Emperor, I'm thinking she could be really, really fierce with him, and I really like the idea of her with other delay-based characters. I think that she's really fun, and I think that she's very good at just being that off-turn damage dealer, which again does scale with FR damage, scaling. And it includes rebreak, so she'll go with like your Gabranths, etc. if you wanted to. But you've got delay and rebreak is even better. So if you can get access to Cloud of Darkness, she will perform very well in the kind of compositions that I personally really like. So from this batch, while I haven't put Sherlotta on my shortlist, she's this close to being on it, you probably should just go for her anyway. Like, realistically, she is extremely powerful just because of the supercharging, the Kate Sith-esque effect, the Brave Gains coming out of your backside, and she's just really good. Reno is also really good in the right compositions, and then Cloud of Darkness, also really good in the right compositions. This is a lovely little batch to kind of go for a playstyle you think you really like. So now we come to a batch where I'm going to say this, and people are probably going to read me to filth about it, or what have you, but I'm going to say this outright. If you pull for one character throughout this entire era, make it Lunafreya. She is unfair. Like, straight up, in my opinion, the single best character in this era. And again, that is purely opinion based. Other people may disagree with me, but I have seen her in pretty much every single event since her release, and that includes events that resist her, because damage will get changed eventually so that elemental damage, if it's not the correct thing, it just deals 1. Still gets used, no problems there. The things that she does enable so many other characters that it's very, very hard to ignore. So alongside Lunafreya will be Ultimisia, Yang C90. We get Terra's FR here and a rerun of Ace and Ramza alongside with FR boards, which make Ramza significantly stronger. Ace is C90 as well. Then we get Iroha and then Sabin and Kuja. So we'll start with the obvious, which is Lunafreya herself. So Lunafreya has 2 different moves that she can do off of her Trident buff that she gets, which are Prayer of Swiftness and Prayer of Might. Prayer of Swiftness makes it so that the character she grants this to, for the next 2 turns, doesn't kill, like, it has an instant turn rate that doesn't increase turn counts, and they get free abilities. Prayer of Might makes it so that they have Leo's LD effect, or Lion's Fury, so they get an additional fixed HP damage added on top of it. Her energy heal, she heals everybody, she batshes everybody, instant turn rate, so she's fantastic for charging the gauge. Oracle Maiden, generic buffs, regens for both HP and bravery. They're generic, but they add up. Freezing Blizzard, ice attack that imperils ice and water, which we'll come to in a moment. That's just a solid attack with just triple HP dumps, that kind of thing. Then she gets Diamond Dust, which is her buff for Shiva that gives party-wide Ice Enchant. So, like I said, there are times where you don't want Party Ice Enchant. She's still used, like, just because of the different things that she can do. But the power in her is going to come from her LD. Awakening is a crazy, crazy, crazy ability. So it enables her trident buffs, which builds up and gives her the ability to grant Prayer of Swiftness or Prayer of Might. Awakening does both on an instant turn rate. That has an attack attached to it. That gives her free skill uses along with the character she gave the Prayer of Might to. And it increases the uses of her basic skills. Honestly, while I think that you can just go for everything Lunafreya related, if you're low on resources, she's still really good with just her LD. I've spoken to a fair few JP players that couldn't get her BT in her FR and still used her because she just provides that much enabling to other characters. And to me, that is significant of a very powerful character. Her BT effect, also incredible. Extends granted buff duration by 1 turn, which means that her buffs will last longer, which is silly. Brave gains, HP damage up, party max brave cap up, party max brave damage cap up. It's all the things that you want from a character with a BT that doesn't necessarily need to go into their BT phase. The crazy things you can do with Prayer of Swiftness is not healthy. Basically, imagine all of your characters suddenly become mini versions of Terra, and then that's kind of where we're going with that. Not only that, she has an FR, which is also very good. It enchants the party for water, which combines with the ice enchant that she already does, and is a multiple HP dumping attack that asks for selecting either water command, ice command, or a buff to the party. So it's not difficult to raise the FR gauge with her either. I would personally go for her whole kit because there are so many situations in which it's good. The number of events where you couldn't use Lunafreya are very few and far between comparatively to most characters. And I just think that she's just so powerful, even in places that resist her. She's just the single character I would go for across this entire era, and that includes Kamlanaut. I think Kamlanaut is fantastic, and yes, I can understand the numbers saying that he's busted. But in terms of pulling for an entire kit, my vote goes to Lunafreya. She is also accompanied by Artemisia, who gets her rework, which basically just increases her damage exponentially, and she gets her BT plus here as well, which is nice, and her BT effect is actually very strong, so there's no reason why you couldn't use Artemisia here. She's not a character I see used very frequently though, because and the reason for that is that I don't think she plays very well with a lot of FR characters, because she doesn't do as much in a single turn as a lot of characters do. So yeah, she can get loads of free turns and she can delete turns like crazy because she gets 2 uses of her BT phase. But that's kind of all that she can really bring to the table, and the free turns that you don't really need because her BT phase is making it so they're losing their turns anyway. So if you like her, yeah, you could absolutely make use of her, but realistically she's not the prize here. Yang is also very good here as well, I should point out as well, doing a significant amount more damage, but he still stays the same as well. Like, he just is an off-turn damage dealer that does more moves between turns, much like Sisney, much like Kain, much like Freya, and he's more like a variant on them. So if you've got those characters, you probably don't need Yang. But if you're a bit tired of using those characters, he is really good to kind of switch things up. When it comes to her event, which is going to be a story chapter, and I should also quickly go back and talk about DET 10, which is with Sherlotta's batch, which is a very brave gain heavy event. Like, you want lots of brave gains. It is Sherlotta's event after all. Most people brought either a combination of Tidus and Sherlotta or Tidus and Kain. Kain is as good as he is up until this point because he doesn't use his bravery when he's dealing damage, so therefore he doesn't care about brave shaving as long as he gets to max bravery before he goes up in the air, or even while he's up there. It's just, Kain is just an extraordinary character for what he does, considering quite how much damage he can do. So with her event, I fully plan on having Lunafreya during this event. If I don't get her BT, there are other banners that I will throw some stuff at, but I will have Lunafreya's full kit by the end of this, so I plan to use her, maybe Kain again, maybe Galoof, or Kamlanaut again will work, maybe Sisney. Aphmau is also usable at this point, although Aphmau has been and gone already at this point, and her C90 is just more of what she already does, so she's not quite as exciting as she was the last time. So then we move on to Terra, Ramza, and Ace. Ace's C90 is, it's fine. If you like Ace, then sure, like, his off-turn damage is still good, but it's still single HP dumps on his moves, on his trap, which is a lot less desirable. Like, yeah, it scales with FR damage, but you could do a lot better nowadays with, or at this point in time, with off-turn damage dealers like Cisne, Yang, Kain. I'm going to say those names a lot for a reason. You probably won't bother with him that much unless you really love him. Ramza gets FR boards though, which really help him a lot. Like, if you're going to use Ramza, he's still fierce, he's still fantastic. FR boards help him a great deal. Terra gets her rerun here and also gets an FR here as well. She does get reworked here so that her dual cast is actually a free attack that you can use in between your casts of Chaos Wave, so she's getting extra turns. And I do love the animation for this because it's Trance Terra and Trance Kuja together, so I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to pull tickets on this at least, because I do like Terra, but she's very similar to Tidus. The same problem that she's always had. With those two, it typically comes down to which one of them gets released first. And in this case, and the previous case, it was Tidus. So if you have Tidus, you don't have a huge amount of reason to pull for Terra, unless you really love her or want her stuff, because she's just asking for instant turn rate, but with magic. So it's not really that different. I probably wouldn't max this out if I got it, but if I did, I'd probably use it once in a while just to play around with, because Kuja plus Terra is awesome. And then moving on from that, we have Iroha. Now, Iroha, first things first, fabulous reason to go into this banner is it's a rerun of Raijin, if you don't already have him, because his LD call is still useful at this point. She also does come with a slight rework to make her damage more competitive. She also starts with her Phoenix's Favor buff, which means that you start with the main thing with Iroha, which is you retain 20% of your bravery whenever you do an HP attack. And much like Ursula, Iroha's actually got a really nice FR as well in terms of it just being quite generic, which is probably better than Ursula, but obviously it comes a lot later than Ursula does. But you get buffs based on whether your HP is at more than 100, or more than or equal to 100%, and if your bravery is at more than 20%. So it's actually even easier than Ursula's one. So I really like it. You will find that you don't necessarily have to have a generic FR unless you want to be really varied in the characters that you use, because the more focused ones tend to increase the gauge a lot higher. But it's nice to have. And then on the last batches for Lunafreya, we have Sabin and Kuja. Kuja, quite frankly, at this point in the game, pisses me off because he's so colossally bland that it drives me insane. He's exactly the same as he's been before. He just does more damage. Like, his Ultima has extra HP dumps in it. That's all I got. And he gains more bravery between hits on his LD. His BT is still perfectly average, if not outright bad. And they've injusticed my boy one too many times. And I've fallen for Kuja every time because he is one of my favourite characters. I really dislike him in Dissidia and it annoys me. Sabin, however, I do really like, and Sabin is the reason that I would at least like to try and get Fujin LD, if not her FR. Definitely don't want the FR, it's bad. But I enjoy Sabin quite a lot in this game. His delay is really cool, so he also works with like Cloud of Darkness and stuff, which is nice. He's got the defense ignore on all of his stuff, which is cool. He now starts with all of his buffs, including his LD buff, so he's going to be doing a lot more damage. And his FR is actually kind of cool because it gives you what Noel's BT effect did, which was party-wide defense ignore. And when a party member selects a wind command or a holy command, preferably both, then you get a pretty significant damage boost. But then obviously you then have to have a wind enchanter and a holy enchanter available for both of those effects to proc. So stuff like Ash, stuff like Fujin, I would like to play around with this. Like, it's not something that everyone has to have. I would like to get this as something that I could have a bit of fun with, but largely it's probably unnecessary. And it's very easy for it to get locked out stuff. So now we have another batch to look at here, which is going to be Yuri. Now, Yuri is very interesting in that you kind of want his BT, but you certainly don't have to have it. But if you do, it does get you past a lot of threshold attacks and sort of unexpected things that you wouldn't like due to his BT effect. But he also comes along with Eldnash. We also get Gladio's return here, which I will come to in just a moment. We get Vayne come about here, and we also get Core. I will probably end up with Yuri's BT because I'm probably going to be pulling on a fair amount of his other stuff based on what characters that I just happen to like, and it might end up being a ticket batch because I obviously have LDs and BTs for those that need it, but I do kind of want to get their FRs. The character that I'm going to talk about first here is actually going to be Gladio. And Gladio is also going to go on my shortlist here as a character that you absolutely want to have hold of if you don't have him already. Because what he is able to do in terms of damage output alongside his impulse, which is still a fantastic thing because he can't be debuffed, he takes 0 damage, his cover tanking is really good. His reworked counterattack is also rather significant as well because it's a triple HP dump and damage attack that also just works really well with enemy off-turn damage dealers. We talked about Reno earlier. There are others that will work very well with this as well. So if you don't have Gladio already, and a lot of long-time players do, if you have him, you got something to look forward to. If you don't, you might want to pick him up. Yuri, on the other hand, his FR is it's a thing. It's Holy Enchanting, which is kind of nice, but it also asks for it only can do so much because it asks for HP regen to occur, which will increase the damage by a certain amount. And then if a different party member selects a holy attack, it increases it by a smaller amount than it would if Yuri was doing it. So it's cool. Like, you don't really want it though. There are other characters you could probably make use of better when it comes to the FR. The BT, however, is very interesting. He also gets reworked so that his magic ring attack is instant turn rate if you're targeting somebody that's locked onto. If you want to learn more about his LD is kind of complicated, and even when I made my Should You Pull video on him, it is fairly complex, but he is a trap-based character in addition to being an aura-based character. And what Great Rainbow Ring does, which is his BT attack, is party damage up, same old, party max brave cap up, all of that stuff. However, enemies are 100% blinded while he has his BT effect up. So he actually does really well at sitting in the sidelines while one of your primary damage dealers is whacking the enemies down to a point where they do threshold attacks or they gain threshold attacks through their force gauge. It's really nice to just go, I know this isn't going to hit me because I don't have that to worry about. Although, there are situations like Gladio, etc., where you kind of want them to hit you because then you hit them back and you do more damage that way in turns that aren't yours. So that's kind of a give or take type thing. Vayne is basically more Vayne. He does a lot more damage now thanks to the rework that he gets with his FR, and it's pretty colossal how much damage he can do. Like, he does 3 HP dumps during his Force of Will, which also re-breaks. So you've got Gabranth as an option there. I absolutely don't think people have to go in for Vayne at all. Certainly considering the character that's going to be coming after him quite shortly. Contempt Plus becomes an instant turn, and that's a huge thing for him, and I will point that out as well. And his BT effect is still nice, like getting a double HP dump on every re-break if you like that kind of thing. You probably wouldn't go to his BT phase though. But his FR is nice, but you gotta be careful because it does ask for Vayne to do stuff, including breaks and melee damage. So it's quite specific in the places he goes. He does go really well with Gabranth though, which I do really like. This is a fan pick for me. Like, I love Vayne, I've enjoyed the way he plays, and having something new and basically making it so that everything he does is re-breaks and re-breaks and re-breaks. I just really enjoy that playstyle, so I would quite like to pick up Vayne. The other character that comes along with him is going to be Leon, which Leon doesn't actually get any like FR or anything, but he does get reworked, and his gimmick is still relevant to this day. Like, his EX gimmick of recovering bravery that is damage to you that's dark, but making it so that the enemy is always enchanted for dark, is a nice thing to have, and it's still an off-turn damage dealer thanks to his LD attacks as well. So he gets that from like the dark drain attack that comes off of his LD. It's nice. Double HP dumps, extra damage, works well with certain characters. So like, it's definitely not a bad thing to have. So this will probably be a banner I pull on primarily for Vayne, but I would like to have Leon. I also really like Vayne with some of the characters that come out later, like Dorgan and Aranea. So for me, he's somebody that I probably would max, even though I wouldn't necessarily recommend him to others. This one, however, I would. And Core is going on my FR not needed but still recommended, because a lot of people already have him. He gets reworked so that Reaper's Gale only takes 7 turns to recharge instead of 10. so that you get, like, so the stacks will go up every time he does his between turn damage, things like that. And because his between turn damage scales off of force time, it's really powerful. And you get extra HP dumps on practically everything, including his extra attacks. He gets double HP dumps on those, which is huge if you already have a high force time gauge going off. And his FR, I don't think you have to have it, but it is really nice because while the FR is active, he has a 40% chance of any bravery damage he deals is rainbow damage. So capped bravery damage, no matter what the cap is, he will be dealing it. And because he attacks so frequently, that's going to proc a lot. And it also goes up whenever a party member triggers an additional attack outside of their turn. So Kain, Freya, Sisney, Core, obviously. There's a lot of extra characters that can do some really nice stuff with this. And when a party member deals more than 9999 bravery damage in a hit, a lot of characters can do this, let's be real. So while I've put him in the FR not needed but still recommended, I do really like his FR. I think it's really good. And I will point out as well that Core and Gladio together are phenomenal. Like, you will deal a lot of damage with those two, and they go with so many characters that those two together are definitely something that you're going to want to have access to. So realistically, if you haven't got any of this stuff, you might find you pick up Yuri along the way, which is kind of nice. And then Yuri's also another like benefit for the six-man area 2, I believe is Yuri's event. So you can take him, you can take Lunafreya, there's loads of characters that you can take along. Anyone that can do off-turn damage and breaks and stuff like that will do well in Vayne's event. Core's event, again, Lunafreya, fantastic. Gladio, fantastic. I should also point out, actually, Gao is also on this particular banner, and Gao is really nice because he allows himself to not like switch his stances so frequently alongside his LD. So you actually find he combines his trap and counter attacks together, but obviously being earth damage, and after this point is when we'll start to see that damage will get mitigated if it's not the correct element. So him being locked to earth and earth enchanting does have some issues, but not as many as you might think. So Gao's kind of a nice consolation prize as well. So the next batch that we're going to be talking about is very interesting because it is the 5th anniversary as of JP. So whether that'll align with what we're doing, it probably will, because there's some interesting stuff that comes out of this, like the 5th anniversary daily pull, the 5th anniversary special pull, which was a 50 pull that was really exciting, and there was a guaranteed BT in it. Could be anything that had been released up until that point. Really cool stuff. But obviously we're going to be focusing more on the characters that are being released at that point. It's also the time in which the Brothers Spiritus event happens, which is the next level up for summons. And something that I didn't talk about very heavily with my Prelude video is that summon damage actually scales with FR damage, so you often find that people summon quite late into their force gauge time, or for their force time, force gauge is different, because they actually do a lot more damage than you would expect. But let's go into some of the characters that we're going to see here. Bartz returns here alongside Tifa's LD and BT, and Tifa's LD BT is a thing. We also get Jack return here, Leo return here, 8 return here. 8 is actually not terrible. He gets a lot of extra HP dumps on his stuff, but by and large, you probably already have like Gladio and Oren or Galoof, and you're probably just going to use one of those instead of 8, but I have seen people use him quite a lot that really like him and do well with him. He's still slow as hell though. And more importantly, Selfie is on the Bart / Tifa banner, which means that she gets enhancement boards, or force boards, which makes her even stronger than she already was, because she's now charging the gauge quicker. This basically bumps her back up to the top of the list. Like, she's just crazy all over again, because she's still a supercharged queen, much like Sherlotta, much like Lunafreya, much like all of these other characters that do really well with it, and therefore you're just going to use it all over again. So if you don't have Selfie at this point, even more reason for you to look at this particular banner. Now, alongside this, we do get Bartz. Bartz gets like reworked to make him so that his damage is more competitive and his auras for himself are more competitive, etc. He's not very exciting though. Like, he's had his day in the sun, his BT effect hasn't really been buffed. Certainly at the point in which where we have characters like Garnet that do similar things whilst also providing off-turn damage, Garnet is definitely going to still be relevant at this point as well. Certainly when she gets her enhancement boards for force gauge, she's just better than him pretty much in every way, and it's kind of sad. Even at this point, she's probably still better than he is. Tifa, on the other hand, if you want raw damage, you're not going to get much better than Tifa for a single target, because all of her stuff gets reworked to have additional HP dumps on it, including the full throttle HP dump attack, or the HP plus attack that is her instant turn. She goes into that, she gets a free skill afterwards, and all of that stuff. You just go crazy, because now it has 6 HP dumps in it, because why the hell not, right? Her FR is also very good as well, particularly for her, because it's when a party member deals bravery damage to a single target or critical bravery damage, and Tifa does a lot of both. So if you're like wanting her to be your focal point of your party and just go crazy with your free turns and your full throttles and burst phase and all of that, it's useful. It is really good. But realistically, it's the BT you want, and it's for this reason that Tifa is the next on my shortlist of recommendations. She does so much damage, especially next to Lunafreya, or while a force gauge is already up, and while she's got free skills that have been granted to her, and all of the craziness that she does, and the Lion's Fury-like effect. It's ridiculous how much damage she can do. When she has her BT effect up, she gets Party Max Brave Cap, all the good numbers, we love all of that, but she also gets 2 follow-ups on everything, which are both just happen to be 3 HP dumping attacks. So you're getting an additional 6 HP dumps on everything. Everything. And if you've got your selfie up, and there's launches, and it's crazy how much damage Tifa can do. So I would definitely recommend her to the vast majority of players for single target damage. She is the queen of single target damage. After her, we get Lude, and Lude has a really nice sort of rework that brings him back up to being competitive. His FR, much like Iroha and Ursula, is a really nice, just generic buff. So you like just a generic ability. You can use lots of things when it comes to Lude, and it's when a party member is buffed with a special effect or stacked buff, slap Rydia Call on him. Just slap Rydia Call on him, and then he's good to go, because then everyone in your party has it. So you could just go off. You also have your evasion up ready, and it's actually not a short amount, not a small amount of bravery gain either. So Ramza also makes this really easy to stack up as well if you wanted to use him. Then it's not as generic as Ursula or Iroha, but it is still very powerful and very easily accomplished. So he is definitely an option if you wanted somebody generic. Faris, I would be lying if I said I didn't want this really badly. Faris is one of my favourite characters in the game, and I really love the fact that Sildra is finally good. Because she gets HP dumps on everything, including her Spellblade Sword Dance, which means that she gets all of her Enchanting Dance, which reduces enemy bravery to 0 after they act. But the problem that she always had was that Sildra, which came from her EX, only lasted for 2 turns, and it didn't do HP damage. Now it lasts for 6 turns and it does HP damage, and I kind of love it. But, like I said earlier, from this point, so from Tifa, you'll find that there's a lot of elemental characters that don't do as well, because from that point, Imperils aren't going to save you from doing no damage. You have to be matching the correct elements to the fights that they're accustomed to. And this is where Faris and some other characters like Sabin, even though I really like him, have some issues. Because if you're hitting for multiple elements, they're not all going to be hitting the right ones, and Faris hits for 3, which is Wind, Water, and Thunder, and that's not ideal for her, although I've not seen many situations where she couldn't be used, even though she doesn't get used that much. But I really love the fact that her combo is really good. Her Whirlpool shot is actually really cool, because it's when a party member selects a water attack command, which includes off-turn triggers, which is really nice, so I like that. And then when you get attack a debuffed target, you get HP damage equal to, or HP bonus equal to the number of debuffs on the enemy. Now, she obviously already does loads, but it means that she's one of these characters that's really spicy and fun to play with, and I just kind of like her. Alongside her actually comes Agrius's C90 as well, which is cool, because her Faded Molly attack, which is the paralysis, the confusion attack, now gets an additional turn added onto it, so it lasts for 2 turns rather than 1, which is nice. And it now it increases her EX gauge as well, which is now quicker, has multiple HP dumps on it. She still has some auras, some HP regen, but her primary function is disruption, which is really cool. But you probably find you don't need to use her all that much. Your prize on this batch is definitely Tifa herself. But there is another banner that comes after this as well, which is another 5th anniversary campaign, so I don't know when they'll plop this down. But this will contain Arden's FR and his rework, as well as Garland's C90. Garland's C90, it increases all his HP dumps. It's quite unexciting. I really like Garland, because I like Garland and FF1 and all things FF1. He's very unexciting. Arden, however, gets a lot of additional stuff on his kit. His LD now re-breaks, which is really good because it will trigger his additional turn. It will trigger his follow-up attacks, which also now has increased HP dumps. And he has an FR that is, if nothing else, very quirky and cool. So some people might really want this, because it's when Arden inflicts break, and when Arden selects an attack command, which is like, why does it have to be just Arden? And then when a party member selects a melee attack, which is, it's not exciting in terms of how you increase the gauge, but while it's active, all enemies recover from break state after 3 turns instead of the 5 that it normally is. I'm not a fan of this, but some people might really like it. It's cute and different at the very least. So, and it's another triple BT batch as well, so it'll have Sephiroth, Arden, and obviously Garland as well. Sephiroth actually gets reworked to do even more damage, so at this point as well, so he's more competitive with everybody else. And that's going to be really good in time for when Dorgan comes out, because we already know that there's Dorgan and Sephiroth combos. There's a lot of cool stuff to come from this, but a lot of players already have, and for me personally, the only character I'm outright gunning for is Tifa, but if I have some spare resources, I would really like to get Faris as well. Okay guys, still with me? Hope you're all okay. I told you this was going to be a long one. We're now going to be moving on to Rinoa's batch, which is going to come along with Dimensions End Transcendence 11. Now, Rinoa's batch itself is actually very good, but Rinoa's banner outside of Rinoa, not so much. It comes with Edward, Shantotto, and Deuce. You probably don't care about any of those 3. I'm just going to say that now. You know, there's uses for Edward. Like, he gets extra sleep duration. He gets an extra, like, just more HP dumps across the board. Edward is a character I really liked when he first came out. You're probably just not going to use him now. And Shantotto is still pretty tragic, and Deuce is still pretty tragic, if you ask me. Rinoa, on the other hand, Rinoa is going to be the next character that's going on my shortlist. And you will notice the fact that the majority of the characters that I've put on the shortlist for their FRs also have BTs. In fact, all of them except one does, although Core could also be in that list, as could one other, which I'll get to in just a moment. So, Rinoa is the only character we're going to talk about of this batch, because I think she's realistically the only one you're actually going to care about. So we're going to look at her rework first, because it looks extremely wordy and scary, but what it actually equates to is she does better auras and she does more damage. That's pretty much all you need to worry about with that. Now, the first thing to think about is the fact that her Angel Wing is an instant turn attack that doesn't do damage, which means that it is a attack that can charge the gauge for her herself. Rinoa is a very selfish character. Her FR definitely comes into that as well. So her FR is magic, buffed with a special effect, and has HP less than 100%. So obviously, more often than not, you don't actually want to have your HP at less than 100%. Rinoa kind of does. So if you're using Rinoa and you're just spamming through a BT phase, and she is kind of the epitome of crack out the BT attack, then do your FR, and then you just do crazy amounts of damage with her specifically, you're probably going to want her FR, which is why she's a complete kit on the list and not just get her BT and her LD. I think her FR is very valuable. With her FR, you can solo DET11 for a start, and there's a lot of things that she can do. All the stuff that Tifa is applicable for when it comes to single target damage is applicable to Rinoa when it comes to AoE damage. And that's very much a product of her BT. Her BT gives her Angel Wing, grants her 6 uses of Angel Wing Ultima or Ultima, and also has HP regen, HP damage resistance, and all the offensive buffs that we all know and love. Angel Wing Ultima. Let me just scroll up a little bit. Angel Wing Ultima is a 9 HP dumping attack with her power. It's colossal amounts of damage. When it comes to the number of HP dumps in attack, that is where the majority of damage is going to lie, because you have to remember that the percentile damage increase from force time is going to hit a wall at some point, because obviously if you can only hit with 1 HP dump, it's only going to apply to that single HP dump. Having 9 HP dumps in an attack, which benefits from all of the buffs that she's already gotten, all of the stuff that she's going to have access to because of her BT effect, the FR force time attack gauge. There's so much damage that comes out of this one move that because you get it, like, you get so many use of it from the BT attack, you can then just go into BT phase and press this one button over and over and over again, and you just watch bosses just melt away. And it's scary how much damage you can deal, and for that reason, she is on my list. And then going up from her, Aerith is on my list, but I can't decide where I want to put her. So I actually put her in the LD only camp because her rework is very strong. Basically, oh wait, we can look at it from this page actually. Her rework makes it so that her Seal Evil buff is on the enemies to begin with, or her buff is on her to begin with, which means she's then able to inflict the debuff that she gets from it, which is they can't buff themselves and you can't take debuffs either. So that's a really powerful thing. And Planet's Admonition then goes on to all enemies and it lasts longer. The HP follow-up doesn't consume bravery anymore, which is great for any enemies that you can't brave shave very easily. It's double HP dumps. You get an HP attack Seal Evil off of it, which is a triple HP dump that increases her EX gauge, so you're then not relying on her other skills. However, her other skills do also both happen to be instant turn-free turn attacks that don't deal damage. So you get where I'm coming from with this. She's another supercharge queen, and she's very, very good at it. She does, however, get her FR, which is very good, and hers is a non-damage dealing attack, which means that it starts at 150% rather than 100%, which I may not have said already, so apologies if I haven't. And this grants a huge HP regen buff for everybody, and also when a party member selects a changed bravery or HP attack command, or a party member recovers bravery, or when Aerith recovers bravery. It's a solid, it's another really just good FR attack. I wouldn't say it was incredible because it's not something you're going to use very often on certain characters, but it's a great one to have access to. So while I don't think you have to have her FR, having access to her kit is very, very cool because Planet's Admonition and Seal Evil are very powerful in general, and the fact that she can now deal quite so much damage, like Fury Brand, obviously she gets a C90 here as well, is 6 HP dumped with another 2 HP dumps added on top of it because of Seal Evil. And that's on Aerith, who is a healer. Like, it's good. It's really good. And then after her, we get Golbez and Balthier. Golbez is still tragic. I hate to say it, because I know there's a lot of people that really love him. He's still tragic, unfortunately. Balthier is a weird one. Like, he gets reworked so that he gets more damage, all of the generic stuff that we all see, but his FR is very curious, is the word I would use. It cleanses all debuffs from party, much like his LD does, steals 3 buffs from all targets, extends those buffs by duration, so it plays into his general gimmick, and it's instant turn rate as well. And when a party member attacks a target with no buffs, selects a ranged attack, or dispels a buff from a target. Now, if it dispels a buff from a target, if it's maxed out, that's 80% on the gauge. That's a lot. So while he's very specific on what he wants, the potential for damage in certain fights is huge if you know what you're doing with him and you pair him with the right characters, and more importantly, that he's in the correct fight where he can take those buffs without taking too many at once, and his FR gets rid of all the buffs. So you need enemies that can buff themselves regularly to really capitalize on it. So he's a really cool one, but he's definitely not on my list, or on my short list, because like I said, and I'll say this repeatedly, and I have done the whole video, this is not an objective. These are the only characters you should be pulling for, no one else. This is just what in my opinion leads to the path of least resistance for the majority of players who don't already know what they want. So I've already named like 5 or 6 characters that I want that are not on this list, and then many more that I'm sure I'll end up pulling for, and I'm just trying to kind of give a general overview of how things are going with this particular era. This is not an objective view. Please do not read me for saying that it is one, because it isn't. But yeah, so Balthier, he's cool, but realistically, you're probably going to pull for Aerith and, like, hopefully get Rinoa along the way. But Rinoa, you really want the full kit for, just because you can use her FR during her BT phase to be able to capitalize on that damage. Like I said, the majority of characters that I've recommended FRs on also have BTs because they can use that FR attack, even though it doesn't set off the gauge during their BT phase, and it just be a heavily increased bravery cap damage attack during your burst phase that hopefully is already benefiting from your existing force gauge or force time damage increase. Right, 2 more batches to go and then we're done here for the time being. So the next batch, the penultimate one we're going to be talking about here, is going to be Minwu. Now, Minwu is a character I am personally extremely excited about. I love him in FF2, and I really like what they've done with him in this particular game, to the point where I very nearly put him on my shortlist, but there is another character that I think I want to put over him, maybe slightly, even though I actually prefer him. And what Minwu is he's just as a trap damage dealer, but he can decrease the trap durations himself to trigger them on purpose. He's also a healer. He's actually a counterpart to the Emperor, which makes a lot of sense considering that they're from the same game, and he works in a lot of really cool ways. He also comes along with the return of Locke's BT. Locke gets a rework and some additional damage and all of that stuff as well. And he, to me, is largely uninteresting at this point, but he does still have the party-wide defense ignoring and the difficulty of being broken, all of that good stuff, which is really nice for Locke. And his Genji Glove Master Scroll attack is now instant turn as well, so that might be really cool for Locke fans out there. Vanille also gets reworked here, and then this is the next point at which one can acquire Cissnei as well, so it will take a while to get her if you don't already have her. So there's my reason, my earlier recommendation on her. And so going over to Minwu, like I said, does a lot of really cool stuff with his Holy Anchor, which is a holy enchant, or holy resistance down, in peril, defense down, duration decreases, it triggers the holy trap, and it triggers twice if his BT effect is active, which is a pretty solid AoE group brave HP attack that also heals the party and also gives you bravery battery. You can tell I'm getting to the end of this now because I'm slurring words, right? And he also deletes turns, because why not? And he gives him extra stacks of being able to do that. So he comes off of his main buff, his Master White Mage, which is his self-enchant for Holy. And yeah, his EX also makes it so he gets his Power to Overcome Destiny buff, which is a typical kind of... It's just a typical offensive buff, but he gets free skill uses out of it. His LD gives him another trap as well, which is Noble Soul, and he gets a follow-up off of that, which combines with the one he already has from his Holy Trap. And it also makes it so that the Holy Anchor lasts for longer, so that you're getting more traps go off. He does a lot of damage considering that he is a White Mage, and it's really cool. And I think you realistically want his FR for his stuff, because again, he's locked to Holy elements, so if you're going to use a Holy character, you kind of want a Holy FR to go with it. And it asks for a party member selecting a Holy attack command, and whenever an additional attack is triggered. Additional attack triggers FR is really good, because like I said, between turns is not ticking down the force time turn count, so therefore you want to kind of have some of these in your back pocket. The only reason I haven't put him in my shortlist is because, I'll spoil it now, I've put Celes in there instead. Sealed Ultima is also very good because it makes it so that the Holy Anchor triggers twice all of the time, and you get all of the offensive numbers that you need to survive. Another character that I have put in the list, which I'm not sure if people will agree with me on this one, because I really like Minwu's batch, is Vaan. Now, Vaan gets a very powerful FR. He is a fantastic damage dealer at this point in time. He does crazy amounts with his FR. Party-wide free skills is really nice. He's going to be doing very well just in general, because you just have to be careful of the mist debuff running out, because you can't fully optimize it alongside with the rest of his stuff, but you do get a lot of damage out of Varn not using an ability that doesn't consume usage, and a party member doing the same thing, and them keeping their turns with more than 20% max bravery. I think it's another nice generic one to have, and Varn's damage is already colossal at this point. He also gets reworked so that it takes another use less to get to the plus versions of his main skills. So it only takes one use and then he just goes off. You don't have to like go 1, 2, 3. So he just goes straight to maximum very quickly. And he gives himself missed off of his FR attack, and again, he has a BT. So therefore, it's another place that you can use it outside of using the FR for the ability in the force time itself. So I quite like having BT characters with FRs because it gives the FR more than one use, even if you're not necessarily using that character for their force time requirements. So I really like Varn for that, and I think he lasts for a good long while, but obviously, this is coming towards the tail end of my point of research. I haven't looked at Sid Reigns' batch. I haven't looked at Seymour's batch particularly closely, so that could be incorrect. So he is he's on the list, but he could come off it as well. Someone else that is also on my list is Hope. So Hope is a character that is very, very unique and powerful because of, in a similar way to Aerith. So his rework is interesting because he actually just gets instant free turns on all of his stuff. You get all of the same stuff like that you've always gotten from Hope, which is your Shell and Protect. That's all very uninteresting. His C90 makes his EX hit harder and heal better. His LD is still good. It's still magic imperil and not an elemental imperil, so it's still relevant to a lot of things that you can do that with. His FR is really good because of how well you can charge it and how well you can charge the time damage multiplier with Hope because of the fact that he can charge it really, really snappy and quickly. So when Hope recovers bravery to a party, after a party member's turn ends while the party has at least 13 active buffs, or when someone else recovers bravery to it. So the fact that you get D-Shell from this as well is also quite nice. You get the Shell and Protect buffs like instantaneously, so you're getting the buffs that would go towards it, and because you can use FRs twice, you can charge it back up again really quickly with Hope if you want to. So if you're looking for somebody that's generic because they work self-sufficiently and don't have a BT, I really like Hope for that because he's so... I mean, yeah, he's restricted in terms of he wants to be alongside a magic damage dealer, really. But even then, not benefiting from D-Shell that much is kind of okay. So it's not the end of the world if you can't capitalize on the magic resist down. But being able to charge an FR gauge that quickly twice, I think is extremely valuable. Kefka is also here on this batch as well, but I don't love him as much. Mainly because he's a BT character without an FR. Similarly to there being BT characters with FRs that I really like, there are a lot of returning BT characters that don't have an FR, which you can use them, absolutely. Kain is a perfect example of one I really like that doesn't have an FR. Well, he does, but you just don't really want to use it. But a lot of the returning ones just seem kind of lackluster in comparison to the ones that come back that do have one. And now the final batch that I'm going to be talking about with FR era. Obviously, we're not up to date completely with the JP version, but I've decided to end it on Celes's batch because I figured that with a next era hopefully coming fairly soon, even if it's extended, this is a good place to leave it. A, so the video is not hours and hours and hours long, and B, because it means that if we need it, we might end up coming across a similar era to Lunafreya late era where it's already too easy, and I already see a lot of that kind of thing in the JP version where people are saying that the game has gotten really easier again, and you know, this kind of thing just isn't needed really at that point. But we're going to talk about Celes' batch. Now, Celes comes around with Thancred and Zidane. Thancred is less terrible than he was before, mainly because he just does a larger number of HP dumps, but it means that if you want to use him, he's not completely unusable anymore. Zidane is very much more of the same. He's just updated to kind of keep up with sort of the current era. I have seen people on Reddit actually using Zidane in a very wide variety of Shinryu missions, so it goes to show that you really don't have to be super picky about who you use as long as you're building a team that works with the characters that you love most. So again, this shortlist is just a shortlist that's compiled of characters, say, who had started the game today, who I sat there and I thought, how many characters can you pull for the least that you could easily get through the rest of the game with? Honestly, with these characters and my final recommendation, which is Sellers, I don't see any event that you couldn't finish between these characters and then friend units like Kamlanaut or Kain. If you didn't pull for one of them, you could probably pull for even fewer than this if you wanted to, depending on what you already have access to, because the updates and stuff to LDs, etc., actually go a really long way for a lot of characters, like BTs as well. Like I've mentioned Selfie, Auron, Core, Galoof, Aerith, Gladio, all of those characters work really well with just what they have now, so you might find you have to pull even less, and some of those characters you can probably live without. After all, Galoof, Gladio and Auron are all tanks, that's what they do, so you might find you don't need all three of them. So that's just kind of like a quick kind of throw together. Like, these are characters that I think are very, very strong and I see used repeatedly throughout the Shinryu era. But realistically, like I said in the Prelude video, you can really build and choose whoever you want as long as you're able to make the team come together in such a way that you're dealing a large amount of damage during FR bonus time, because that's where the strategy of the game is headed. Anyways, let's finish up by talking about Sellers, Aranea, and Dorgan. Now, Sellers, the reason I've recommended her so much is because she is very capable of soloing a lot of content, but you would need her full kit to do it. So she gets reworked to a point where Runic is like more resistant to stuff. So for your party, Shine Edge is much more powerful. Her EX is much more powerful. Her Freeze Dive now restores skill uses. The trap from her Freeze Dive is much stronger. It has 3 HP dumps in it. Her FR asks for ice damage, including off-turn triggers, absorbing bravery damage, which is what Runic has always done, and then when Sellers attacks an enemy that's targeting her. So if you're soloing with Sellers and you get the FR off, you're going to be hitting all of them regularly. So that's not a problem. Her BT basically turns her into Leon 2.0. All enemies' bravery damage becomes magic bravery damage. So Runic absorbs everything. And then she gets brave gains, brave damage, HP damage resist in case you need that, and then party max brave cap and damage cap. So she just is another tanks are really good in this era, okay? Like really good, because the counter damage and off-turn damage in general is just very powerful. You'll notice that the majority of all of the characters that I've got down here, maybe with the exception of Varn, and Varn is one that I was very and ahhing about putting on that list, are characters that either increase the gauge very heavily in one go, so like your Kamlanauts and your Tifas, your Rinoas, etc. Characters that do a lot of off-turn damage or contribute a lot of off-turn damage, so Cisne, tanks, Core, Kain, etc. Characters that can make it so that you're set up well for charging the FR gauge, so Selfie, Aerith, Lunafreya, Sherlotta, which is the character that I did want to put on there instead of Varn, and like, so I don't want people to read me for not putting Sherlotta on there, because trust me, it was literally a 50-50 between her and Varn, and I'm kind of leaning more towards Sherlotta now that I'm thinking about it, but Varn is there, so I don't want to change it around. Or characters that, and Hope as well, or characters that just deal a crazy amount of damage in a short space of time. So Tidus, Rinoa, Tifa, and then Lunafreya just does a bit of everything, and she's got so many buffs that she can give to other players that it just works really well. So that's why the majority of the characters there do one of those things, if not multiple. Aranea, I actually really like Aranea. I think her FR is really cool. I don't know if you necessarily need to have her FR, because her rework is also very good, but the effect of her FR is very cool. So it delays enemy turns by 1 on break. Now, her rework makes it so that she starts with her LD buff up, which is anytime she attacks an enemy, she re-breaks them. So you get delay, so it's a double break delay on everything during the FR time, and it asks for delay by at least 1 or critical bravery damage. The other thing that's nice about Aranea here is that High Wind, her skill 2, gets reworked so that you get an additional, so that you get Vital Crusher on all of the enemies. Her EX also gets buffed here, so do much more damage, much more HP dumps, free skill on the next turn. high-speed maneuvers gets extended. It takes so you have it for longer. You get more turns of overclock so that you don't run out of that. I mean, that's not really been an issue for a while, but it all adds up to another hefty rebreak. So if I'm doing Vayne will go really well with Aranea. Gabranth can also work really well with Aranea. It's all going to be about characters that pair up nicely together so that you can go off in a way that suits your playstyle. And then finally, Dorgan. I already know I want Dorgan. Like, I don't care if anybody else wants him or not. I have to have him. He is one of my FF5 favourites. I love the way that he plays. He pairs up really nicely with some of my favourite characters. He's just very, very cool. He is an off-turn damage dealer that enchants himself for wind and has an FR that asks for party-wide wind damage, which is really, really aggravating when they do that. But it's another reason that I want Fujin LD, even though I don't want a FR at all. So, Rebreaker. He also has a follow-up that depends on breaking the enemy. So he pairs up very well with Sephiroth. We talked about Sephiroth a while ago. Because he does an AoE bravery attack on his follow-up, which if you're against multiple enemies and that breaks the other enemy, he does his follow-up twice. So you get a triple HP dumping attack, like multiple times. If his FR is up, you can do quite well with it, because when Dorgan does a wind attack, when a party member does a wind attack, or when you get a break or a broken enemy as well, like you get extra HP damage from that too. So it's good stuff, and I just really like the way he plays. Not sure I need to have his FR, but if I do end up getting Fujin LD, then at least I have the capability to use it to its fullest potential. But people love pairing him up with Sephiroth because it means you're getting that double follow-up every single time, because their bravery is resetting to 1. So you do a single target attack on somebody, Dorgan follows it up, and then breaks the other enemy, and then follows it up again. He also has some nice defensive moves as well, like his EX makes it so that enemies deal 0 damage, which is quite nice. And he's just a character that I'm very interested in general, and I will almost certainly be pulling for him based on the fact that he has instant break, rebreak, follow up on rebreak. I really like break-based characters. Like, I just really enjoy that playstyle. So the fact that he's FF5 and he's one of my favourite characters is absolutely it for me. So that's pretty much my coverage of as much of the FR era as I'm willing to go through at this point in time. And I will say it once more, this is not an objective list. This is my impression of what I think would benefit players that don't necessarily know what to do on what characters they might pull on. It's not a be-all and end-all of you get these characters or you're going to lose, because it's absolutely not true. You can go in for whatever you want, because there is a lot of wiggle room on FR era in general in Shinryu difficulty. And once you've got that smooth swing of things, you probably don't find you need very many FRs at all. Like, I've got 8 listed there. You could probably go with less if you wanted to. Friend units will carry you very, very well. Kamlanaut and Kain are fantastic friend units. Lunafreya does a lot of work for a lot of characters. Rinoa and Tifa are fabulous friend units as well. Characters like Selfie, Sisney, they will do very well. You can get pretty far through Shinryu era without pulling for an FR at all if you really want to. But you don't, at the end of the day, people want to know what they can pull on and what's safe to pull on. And this gives, hopefully, an early impression not only of what my recommendations are for things to be pulled on, but things that I would really enjoy and my reasons for enjoying them. I mean, I'm pulling for Fujin, for Christ's sake, but not for her FR. I'm going to say that again because people will read me to filth about that. But there's also a lot of stuff here that we haven't covered as well. Like, Emperor's going to come back, and we still love Emperor. Emperor is a character I haven't mentioned here, but he is actually very good. And they're like, for a good few months after his BT Plus release. And then Sid reigns. Enna Crow's actually quite good again when she comes around, and her FR's quite cool. Lilacet. And then we get Seymour. Seymour's BT comes around. From what I gather, though, people love Seymour because it's anima and Seymour is cool, but he's not a character people are absolutely kind of, I have to have this. So he kind of fits the same role he has done before. And then we get Maria FR come around. She got a really cool costume, actually. And she's another off-turn damage dealer. And then afterwards, there is a character that's not actually listed here, because this is the top of where we are right now with JP, that scares me and concerns me just a touch. And it's this guy. Good old Jack. From what I've seen of him, he's like the next level of power creep. Like, there's damage, and then there's this guy. So definitely keep an eye on him in the future.
we should be going into C99 or C100 era fairly soon. Beatrix FR is the last thing that's listed there, and I'll tell you what, Beatrix is the character that made me go back and look at Reno, because it's thunder damage, and it's off-turn damage, and made me go, oh, do you know what, maybe I do want Reno FR. Because I can see now why people really love him, and there's loads of people who use Reno. Sephi, actually, shout out to you, because I've been watching some of your videos with Reno, and you can do wonderful things with him, and that's definitely given me some convincing. But yeah, like, that is where my stance is currently with JP, and again, I don't play JP, but I've definitely done a lot of research, like literally months worth of it, to try and compile this list and go through every character and do the research so that you guys don't have to. And that's going to be it from me. So thank you ever so much for watching this video. Do like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and yeah, that's going to be it for me. I think it's time for a lie down. Thank you ever so much, everybody. See you next time. Take care.